We are the only ones here at the moment. Like I said, Shabbos ends late and it's hard to get people organized. I think this is not such a great idea, this Shabbos night. And tomorrow's, I guess because it's Father's Day, people will be busy with family activities. So.
I think it's inviting us for a boat. What came in the mail?
It's right there. You're overpaid or you have a refund on your Nostrum bill, I think.
Hi, Bernie.
Litvach, how are you?
Good work to you.
Very well, thank you. It looks like this Saturday night is not such a great time for attendance at this year.
No, I don't think so.
We were waiting last week and now I think I saw Barbara's not going to be there. We'll see who's here.
Barbara is not going to be there.
I haven't seen Faggy yet either in the last week or two.
Is it too early?
No.
We're just trying to decide whether Matzah Shabbos is a good idea.
No, obviously it's not working.
No.
So, but I guess last week people had things going on, and the week before people had things going on.
Okay. No
I don't,
problem.
but I think it's too early, right? I guess, I know Ellen's gonna come on.
Okay. I haven't seen Faggy. I was just mentioning she hasn't been on the last couple of times.
Ernie, you saw Faggy today,
I know, I saw Ellie.
but, so you can do it Sundays then.
Sundays are fine for me. You know, the only time people are having, there might be people missing Sunday too. We just have to.
Wait for, I don't know, do people? Hi, Ellen, Shavua Tov.
Hi. This is a tight squeeze getting ready for 9:15.
I know. So Bernie thinks maybe Saturday night's not so great.
Yeah, it's a little,
But I think there were a lot of simchas, like last Sunday, people wouldn't have been able to go because there was like last Sunday and the Sunday before and.
right. But we're here,
That's right. We're still eager to learn, right, Ellen?
absolutely. Oh, I did a little research. And the question was, how many times was it said that they were an Eved Hashem?
Yeah, the
Oh,
number
yes.
of the people who were called Eved Hashem, yeah.
Right. We thought it was 4.
I found 3. I found Moshe, Yehoshua, and David. That was it.
Okay, and we know, yeah, because we know we've seen Yoshua called Eved Hashem.
That was at the very end, right after he dies. That's how he's called. And Moshe, many times in Torah, numerous times, is called Eved Hashem. And over here in David, but I couldn't find anything else.
Wasn't Yaakov also mentioned as an Eved Hashem?
Not in those words.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi.
Oh, Walter. Oh, there's,
Where are
Walter.
we?
There's a Walter.
We are
There you
on
go.
Shmuel
Hi,
Beis,
hi,
Esty.
Walter. Hi, Esty.
Shmuel Beis, Perek Zion, Pasuk Yud.
Did I read this today?
Zion Yud.
Where?
I think so.
Shmuel Beis, Perek Zion, Pasuk Yud.
Ernie, it's a little tight this now, by the time you get on.
I know.
What about Bernie?
He's talking to Ernie.
Do we want to start 9:30?
I think when Shabbos is out so late, maybe for the next few weeks at 9:30.
Okay, let's do it at 9:30.
And like, quarters after 10, like the same 45 minutes?
You can just do it for half an hour.
We might
Anybody
do it
want
just for a
to,
half hour.
anybody want to
45
entertain
I would do it for
Sunday
40, 'cause
night?
that way it's not too late.
But you're frozen.
Anybody want to
Why?
consider Sunday night at 9 o'clock? Or is that not
That
working
works
for
for
you?
me.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think some people may have things, yeah.
The only
Yeah,
thing,
Sunday 9 o'clock is well.
It's good for me, whatever.
Whatever, fine.
okay, well, let's think
Good for
about
me
it.
too at 9 o'clock. That's great. We can do 9 o'clock. And then if there's something, I don't have anything. else.
So we left off
Zion, what pasuk? Sorry, Zion.
Pasuk Yud. Pasuk Yud. We left off that that David HaMelech was promised that he was going to have Shem Gedolim. Yasiti lecha Shem Gadol k'Shem HaGdolim asher ba'aretz.
I don't remember.
We said it was like to be included like Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, that there's a bracha in the Haftarah, Mogen David.
Right.
And also the Kisei David, Meheira B'soicha Sachin, by Boni Yerushalayim. That means there's it's like a chasima because it's close to the end of the bracha. Chaismin b'v'chisei David Meheira L'soicha Tachin, Baruch Ata Hashem Boni Yerushalayim. So anything that's samuch l'chasima, it's like me'ena chasima.
Hi, Figgy.
So like.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi, Faggy, nice to see you.
Nice.
Thank you.
I
Nice
saw
to
Ellie, I saw Ellie in shul.
Where have you been hiding?
I was in Connecticut
Oh,
Very nice.
for how long?
2 weeks.
Very
2 weeks.
nice.
Nice.
Ernie, sorry to interrupt, but could we dedicate the shir to Ellie's mother? We have Yortzeit tonight, Simcha Bat Eliyahu.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We should be, with the learning that we do tonight should be La'aliyah Neshama Simcha Bas Eliyahu.
Thank you.
We also talked, Faggy, next week, we'll learn at 9:30.
Oh,
First,
okay.
people said they wanted to do Sunday at 9.
We can try it out.
Bernie, what pasuk and chapter are you on?
We're on Shmuel Beit, Perek Zion, Pasuk Yud.
Walker?
Shmuel Bet, Perek
Yeah,
Okay,
Zion.
we got it, we got it, okay.
But this one isn't it? Bonei Yerushalayim.
No, we talked about that the Pasuk test.
You is that?
Test said that I'm going to make you a name. V'asiti lecha shem gadol k'shem hagdolim asher ba'aretz. And the Meforshim explained that David was elevated literally to the level of the Avos. That just like in Shmona Esrei, we say Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, we make a bracha we are choisem with David. So, for example, in the Haftorah, the Birchas Haftorah, we say Baruch Ata Hashem Mogen David. So it's a bracha. We're choisem with David, like we're choisem by the others. Others say it relates to the Chisei David Meheira L'soicha Sachin. Baruch Ata Hashem B'nei Yerushalayim. It's close to the bracha, so it's Me'ena Chasima. Then Pasuk Yud V'samti Mokom LaAmil Yisrael. We're gonna the Bnei Yisrael are gonna be in a Mokom, safe, secure. Untativ v'shachan tachtav. I will plant them there, and I will shoich in my shechina with them. V'lo yirgazo. I will not get angry. V'lo yosifu b'nei avla lanoso kasher barishona. And I will not cause enemies to torture them. From here, Chazal learn in Bracha Zayin Amid Beis. Rav Yochanan Mishum Rav Shimon ben Yochai. Kol hakovei makom letfilasoi, oivav noiflim tachtav. Shneamar, v'samti makom lamil Yisrael tatif v'shachat tachtav lo yigazod. That a person who is Kovea Mokum for his tefillah. Everyone in shul has a place where they daven. It's a skula that your enemies will fall by the wayside. It's from this pasuk. There's Brachis Rabbah when, again, back to pasuk Tes, when it says V'yeh imcha b'chol asher alachta, I will be with you in everything you do. So let's remember Brachis Lamed Aleph. Yaakov Avinu is told, Shuv el eretz lavosecha u'lemoladetecha v'yeh imach. Go back there, it's Canaan, I'll be with you. Hacha atamer v'yeh imcha be'eretz avosecha. In this pasuk by David, I'm going to be with you in the land of your fathers. That's by Yaakov, I'm sorry. Beitzel David nemer v'yemcha b'chol asher alachta. Ela David al yedei shu mefarnes es Yisrael, hayu omer lo v'yemcha b'chol asher alachta. David provided parnasa for Gans Klal Yisrael. Aval Yaakov al yedei shu mefarnes es beiso. Yaakov provided sustenance for his house only. Shu v'leretz avosecha. So David's bracha seems to be more than what Yaakov Avinu was given. So the Musar Navim says, "Hainu b'nei Yaakov lo hayam mefarnes rak im beiso bilvad, lekach lo haysa zchusa gedola kol kach." Means when you're in charge of a community, like David was, and you have to take care of their needs. The zechus is greater. That means Yaakov needed the schus that the forefathers lived in Eretz Yisrael. Aval David when they shayim of farnes kol Yisrael leficha chaysa schus gedola shegam b'chutz la'aretz haysa shechina umo. For example, when he went to conquer Syria, which was considered chutz la'aretz regarding Eretz Yisrael, still HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with him and with his armies. Why? Because he was doig for the parnas of Klal Yisrael. So again, we see some of the special brachas that David had. Now, what about this concept of that kvias makom by tefillah, by setting a place where you daven, that's a protective thing? The Musar Navim brings from Ein Eliyahu, if a person does a mitzvah in one specific place, that place actually gets a greater sense of holiness. And therefore, in essence, you basically create a makam amigdash where you daven. If you daven in the same place, and therefore you're doing mitzvahs every time in that same place, you create a makam kedusha, and therefore your tefillos will be answered more. Pasuk Yud Aleph. From the day when I commanded Shoftim, I gave you some breathing room from your enemies. The Bnei Yisrael were given the mitzvah that once they were at peace from their enemies, then they would take care of building a house for Hashem.
Is Shoftim usually written with a vav between the shin and the pei?
It can be written, well, that's mole, and here it's not, it's written without mole.
J'ai oublié, j'ai fait la quoi?
Now, the Eliyahu Rabbah on this pasuk says, when it says, "V'gid lecha Hashem, ki bayit yaseh lecha, mikan amru kol hasoidim chavero, afilu pas b'melech or yerek or tmorim or groigrois, or afilu tovelim or batzir." That means you invite somebody to your home and you give him bread with salt or vegetable or dates. Avu pi sheyesh la'osu soid mea sudos b'chol yom, kesuda shlomo b'shato, afilu hachi yachzik lo tov l'chaver b'fonav. Even if he has his own meals, like Shlomo HaMelech, he makes sure to have akaras hatov to his friend in front of him because of the fact that he's benefiting from it. And the Musar Nevi'im says, Kinei HaKadosh Baruch Hu yivtiach l'David shebeschar zeh shu chafetz livnot lo bayit. Just the fact that David HaMelech has the desire to build a bayis for Hashem, v'af she'ein tzorach la'mokom she'yeh lo bayis miyuchad, Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need a bayis. Ki chvodo malei olam. Hashem fills the whole universe. V'chol zot hechzik toivel l'David ba'ad ritzoynoi. See how much the desire to perform a mitzvah Hashem takes into heart. That ritzono hatov v'shalim lo mida keneged mida. U'mizeh yesh lumo shemi sha'asa toivel l'chavero. Somebody does a good deed to his friend, af shein lo tzorach b'osa davar, even if his friend doesn't need it. Hu tzorach la'achzik lo tova bad zeh. You have to recognize the tova that was done to you. Again, the midos that we learn from simple psukim. Pasuk Yud Beis. Ki imlu yamecha, your days will become full. V'shochavta savoisecha. You will pass away and you will join your forefathers. And this is a bracha to David. V'kimosi ezracha charecha, asher yitzeh mimeyecha, v'achinosis mamlachto. This is the promise. Yes, David was not given the right to build the Beis Hamikdash, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving him bracha after bracha. And here he gives him the bracha that the Beis David will be the house that the kings will come from. First of all, he's maftiach that he's going to live a long life, because we know David lived 70 years. It says in Tehillim, Yimei shnoseinu b'hem shivim shana, u'begvura shmonim shana. But a long life was considered 70 years. He was 30 years old when he was appointed king. He ruled for 40 years. And it's part of the schar of wanting to build the bias was the fact that he was going to live life.
The Ne'amlo is lists 7 different haftachos that Nasan Navi gave David with this. Like you just said, you live your full 70 years. V'shachafti mavosecha, when you die, you will die at peace and not in battle. The next v'hakimosia zaracha, I will establish your seed after you. So that no son will usurp the throne from you. It'll wait until after you've passed away. Then the 4th one is your offspring, or literally those who come from you. His son, it refers to a son not yet born as of the time the haftacha was given. Then it says, "V'hakimos yes mamlachto," I will establish his kingdom, meaning as soon as he ascends the throne, his kingdom will be established. Hu yivne bayis, I guess that's already the next pasuk, meaning Shlomo HaMelech will build the Beis Hamikdash. V'chonanti es kisei, and the 7th is, I will secure the throne of his kingdom forever, meaning the kingdom that's being promised to David and his descendants will be eternal. It's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
Who were the mothers of Avshalom and Adoniyahu?
So we went. Remember Chagit? We had a pasuk earlier on Shmuel. that we were told already who the mothers were. Avshalom, I think, was from Chagit, or Adoniyahu was from Chagit. We're gonna have, we will see that again. We had a pasuk that described his sons and who the mothers were.
Right.
I want to focus on v'shochavta es avosecha,
Mhm.
which we know usually
Where
means
is that?
death. By the way, in Divrei Hayomim here, the dialogue is ki maluya mecha laleches im avosecha. So over there, the Malbim says Ezra Yodia, because Ezra is the one who wrote Divrei Hayomim. Ki hatzadikim ein lehem menucha lo ba'olam hazeh v'lo ba'olam haba. Shneamar yelchu mechayil el choyil. That tzaddikim go from chayil to choyil. Both, they're busy in this world, they're busy in the next world. Then, in the end of Brachas, Chazal quote the pasuk that we laned in today's Haftorah. Zechariah Navi, who has a nevuah of the menorah, tells Yoshua the Kohen Gadol, "V'nosati lecha mahalchim bein ha'omdim ha'eleh." The gam la'achar misa, shayich halicha kamo ba'olam hazeh. That even after death, l'chora, there's halicha. Now that's a little bit of a wonder. How does a person after death have the opportunity to do mitzvahs and maisim tovim?
The children can do it for them.
How can you call them mahalchim? So Efshar says, the Malbim, the Kavadata Pasuk Lomar, the Aftemes David, even David is going to die, he's not going to be able to be the Beit HaMikdash. Like Ellen says, Masei Shlomo b'no, sheyivne abayis ala yesudot, sheichin David aviv, chashuvim ki'ilu David asa usam, uschusahu. V'imkein emet, demita hi shchiva, v'gam halicha. Death is shchiva, but also halicha. Not that the mace can do it, but the fact that children and grandchildren and further is done by his chus. The same remez is given as to why we place a stone when we go visit the graves of our loved ones. Because it's they have one matzeva. They can't add any more stones to their matzeva. But when we put a stone on their matzeva, we as their progeny are showing that we are adding to the legacy of our loved one and adding to their matzeva. In a similar vein as this void. Pasuk Yud Gimel, Hu Yivneh Bayis Lishmi, right? The son of David will build the bayis. The Konantias Kisei Mamlachto Ad Olam. And the Melucha will always remain in the family of David HaMelech. The Griz, Halevi, on the Torah, that shows a very strong connection between the Beis HaMikdash and Malchus Beis David. They're connected because it's based on Yerushalayim that David made a big effort to bring everything to Yerushalayim and that it should be in one shevet. And Kol Kiyuma Shel Malchus Beis David Kosher V'Tov Yerushalayim V'Mikdash. When there won't be a Beis HaMikdash, Yoivad Gam Sham Malchus Beis David. That's why we have no Malchus Beis David when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed. Yudalid.
Is this a remez to Mashiach in any way, these promises?
I don't see yet he's not talking about Melech HaMashiach, he's talking about the regular Malchus will stay in David, it stays in David's family. Now,
We'll see you with the next
the
pasuk.
Mashiach is going to be a Melech, then of course it's got to be from Beis David. Now, there's Brachas Yerushalmi says, Ein dor she'ein bo litzonim. Every generation has like clowns. Ma'yu pritzei ador oisim, the sort of the mockers of the generation. Hayu holchim etzel chalonos of shel David v'armelo David emes yivne Beis HaMikdash. Amosai Beis Hashem Nelech. They would say, David, who's going to build the Beis Hamikdash? They knew that it was taken away from him. V'hu Oimer, Afal Pishem is Koinen Lachiseni. David realized, even though these people are trying to anchor me, Yavo Alai Shani Samech Believe, I'm happy. And that's why it says in Tehillim, Samachti Be'omrim Li Beis Hashem Nelech. The famous capital is based on the fact that David remained happy even though they tried to chapel with him. And that's why it says, Ki Imlu Yamecha. Amr Shem Gamliel. Amr Kadosh Baruch Hu David. David Yomim Leim Ani Moina Lecha. I'm going to fulfill your years. We know David was born on Shavuos. He passed away on Shavuos. And Eini Monacha Yomim Chaser. I'm not going to take any days away from you. Klum Shlomo bin Chaboyne Beis Hamikdash. Lo la'akriv bo korbanos. That the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built for korbanos, but says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chaviv alai mishpat utztaka sha'ata osei yoser min hakorbanos. You, David HaMelech, that are always learning Torah and are always making sure that mishpat and tzedakah are being performed, that's more precious to me than all the korbanos. Like it says in Mishlei, Asei tzedakah u'mishpat nivchar l'Hashem mizevach.
Where does it say that?
It says that in Mishlei. Asay tzedakah u'mishpat nivchar l'Hashem mizevach. It's more choice to Hashem tzedek u'mishpat than all the korbanos. And Musar Nevi'im points out is mutav lo yoser shelo yivnei beis hamikdash uvatshu yarech yomim. That means even though the besora now is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's bite is not going to be built until after David's death. So you might think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would hasten David's death because he wants the binyan Beis Hamikdash to be built. No, just the opposite. He wants arichos yamim for David. Ki hatzedakah v'hamishpat shu oiseh tovim lo yoser markabot. What's the reason for all the sins that people need to bring korbanos for? Because there's no mishpat u'tzedakah between people. So if someone is doing mishpat u'tzedakah, there's not even going to be a need for korbanos. Pasuk Yudalid. Ani eyelo la'av. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells David, I will be to him like a father. V'hu yeli leben, and he will be a son. Asher ba'avato v'chatzi b'shevet anoshim uvenigei bnei adam. The taich. So that when he sins, I will chastise him with the rod of men and with afflictions of human beings. Rashi, B'shevet Anoshim, Zehadad Urizon ben Eliada. Shlomo Melech is going to have a certain downfall. Through Hadad and Urizon, we're going to learn it in Malachim. And Uvenike Bnei Adam says, Rashi Zashmodai Shadochtu Mimachuso. There was a shade called Ashmodoi. Vashedim Bnei Adam Arishonim. The shadim all came from Adam Arishon. Shekol Me'or Shloshim Shana Shapir Sh'Adam Me'ishto. B'mot Hevel. What's wrong with my eyes?
Can't see.
After Hevel died, Adam Arishon separated from his wife 130 years. Hayuharuchos misyachmos v'yoldos imenu. And therefore, if he had like a seminal emission, these shadim occurred and were produced. And that's why it's called Nigei Bnei Adam. Okay. Pasuk Tetzvav.
Ernie, can I stop you a second?
Yes,
To the question that Ellen asked just before about to the time of Mashiach. So if you look at the pasuk, the key word has been V'hochachtiv b'shevet anoshim. Shevet is a scepter, right? What does God say? That he will be punished, right, with the rod of man. This is a referral to Birchos Yaakov, where Lo Yosur Shevet Bihuda Umachokek Miben Rav Ad Ki Yovo Shilo, right? The Shevet is referring that this will be the it would the Shevet, the scepter of leadership will stay in the hands of Yehuda's descendants, which means David HaMelech and his progeny. But it's referring Ad Ki Yovo Shilo as a reference to till the time of Mashiach, right? At which time the Mayam Lois ends by saying that at that time, once the Mashiach comes, you will no longer need to use a shevet to chastise someone who's gone off the derech, because everyone will be following. In times of Mashiach, everybody will have accepted HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Oh, so that's a remez. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
Tesvav v'chazdi lo yasur mimenu. I will not take my chesed away. Kasher asirosim im shol asher yirosim ufanecha. The way I removed the hatzlacha from Shaul when Shaul turned against me. V'neman beitcha u'mamlachtecha ad olam ufanecha. You'll be kiyum. Your kingship will remain. Kisachai yenachon ad olam. The foundation will be forever. And this is also, so how does this add to what was said before? Even if it would afim yifsok ba'emsa yashuv tamid l'David. The chiddush now is that even if there might be a break, it's always going to come back. The other by it always comes back to David. Like it says, Lo Yasur Shevet Miyudah L'Shevet Acher. And of course, the Chashmonai kings were chastised in the times of Hanukkah that they took over the Malchus. And the Gemara says that there were all the progeny were wiped out from the Chashmonai kings because they went against this edict of Lo Yasur Shevet Miyehuda. Yudzayin k'chol advar ma'ele u'k'chol achizayon hazeh kein diber Nason David. So all of these visions is what Nasan HaNavi told to David HaMelech. He wasn't said that if he sins, he's not going to be punished. The bracha here that was given to him is that his malchus will never, the malchus won't leave his family. We see he was given saras. It was other. When he killed Uri Achiti, he was
cold.
Later on in life, he was cold. Correct. And the Griz Levi on the Torah says in the name of Chaim, we know not all of the children of David were tzaddikim. Some of the malachim were not tzaddikim. But the bracha that the malchus should stay forever was mamish a bracha that even if they were not worthy. Pasuk Yud Ches. Vayavo Melech David, vayeshev lifnei Hashem. So David comes to the Beis Hamikdash in front of the Aron and he sits. Vayomer mi anochi, ad Hashem Elokim mi beisi ki aviosoni ad halom. Who am I that I was brought? Halom is a reference to the kingship. Now, the Rishonim learn that this happened in Mishkan in Givon. And the Gemara says from this pasuk, Ein yeshiva b'azar l'malchei beis David bilvad. Nobody could sit in the Azar except the Malchus beis David, because we see here David HaMelech sat. Now, if he sat here in Yerushalayim near the Aron, he was sitting in the Azara, because he was not sitting in the Azara because the Mishkan now was in Givon, right? They hadn't moved the Mishkan yet to Yerushalayim. So how do we learn from this pasuk that there's no yeshiva bazara? So there are Rishonim like the Ritva who learn that in a Chanami, David went to the Mishkan in Givon to daven. And that's where he sat. And that, therefore, we learn from this pasuk that the Malchei Beis David could sit in the Azara. So it's a machlokas of whether he davened here in front of the Aron or whether he went to Mishkan. Now, the Yalkut Shimoni says, Amar David, lo ayisim mispalat Elokim ad shayisim misyashev dati u'mesakin atzmi. I have to have yishuv adas. I have to be calm. And that's why Chazal tell us, the halacha says, Chasidim arishonim, hayushoin sha'achas. They would come to the Beis Knesset for an hour and meditate. U'mispalin k'dei shichadnu slibam lavia. Then they would daven for an hour, and then after an hour, they would also have kavanah. So you have to prepare yourself for davening. And we learn this as well from this pasuk. Part of the tefillah, Vatiktan od zos beinecha Hashem Elokim. I'm small in your eyes. Vatdaber gamel beis avdecha lemirachok v'zos taras adam Hashem Elokim. The Yalkut Shimoni says when he says zos taras adam ze Yosef, because it says vayi Yosef yifei sar v'yifei mareh. And the Zos Taras Adam Amu'ula Shebenevim Ze Moshe. Atamoitze Masha Kosu B'Zeh Kosu B'Zeh Ze Molach Yisrael Yehuda. Right? Yosef ruled over both Yisrael and Yehuda. V'Zeh Molach Yisrael Yehuda. Moshe Rabbeinu ruled over all the Shvatim. Ze Potach Ba'ashrei V'Zeh Posach Ba'ashrei. Because Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ashrecha Yisrael Micha Mocha. Moshe, says the Radak, went up to Shamayim. He was Meshubach Shemidviim. David was Meshubach Shebamlachim. That those things that Moshe did, that's what David did. Moshe Hotzias Yisrael Mitzrayim. David Hotzias Yisrael Meshibud Malchios. Moshe Karli Yisrael Sayam. David Karli Yisrael Sanaharois. Shenemar Batzvoisois Aram Narayim. Later, when they go capture in Syria, the rivers are going to split for David. Moshe Nasan Yisrael Chamisha Chum Shei Torah. David Nasan Yisrael hates Form Shabbatihillim. So, big connection between our earlier avos. It says also in Masechta Shabbos Daf Tes, Lo yeshev adam lechol samuch lemincha chispala. A person before mincha should not have lunch. He should daven first. So they asked, Mehemasai itchilachila, Rav Amar Mishiyito Yor, when you wash your hands. Rav Chanina Amar Mishiyito Chagura, when you take off your belt. So he calmly crossed Elokacha Yisrael. You have to prepare yourself prior to davening. And the Gemara learns it all from these psukim. Now, the David, it also says that he was an Admoini. He was like red-haired. Im Yefei Mare. V'nimsa she David hayashav eli Yosef. Yosef was also very good-looking. U'mashe tafsus hashvach hazeh b'shneim. The fact that David and Yosef are referred to here. Harei uzeh davar chitzoni ba'adam. It's a physical thing. Ein zeh mala ruchanit. Vein royli shtabech b'zeh. Why would you praise somebody because of some kind of physical beauty? Vanira loymar. Shezeu mishum dechol mishu yefei tor v'yefei mare. Somebody who's handsome, alulu latseis l'tarbus roy. He could go off the derech. Like they say in the Dorim, Daf Tes Omer Beis, Omer Shimon Atzadik, Pamachas ba'odam echa ben adorim yefei nayim, the Tov Roy. I once met up with a person who came from the south who was handsome. He had beautiful hair. V'omer li roy ayi la'aba be'iri v'lachti lo malos mayim and mayin. My father sent me to go get water, and I looked in my image. So he took a ned there. So Yosef and David, after Yafim Limaod, Bechol Ze is Gabriel Yotzra. Im Ken Shapir, Ve'ayofi Shalem Yeshvach Gadol. We mentioned this because Yosef and David were able to overcome their Yetzer, even though they were prone to it because of how good looking they were. Pasuk Chaf.
Yeah. Ernie, may I add something?
Please.
The Me'am Loez adds, makes a comparison between Malchus Yisrael and Malchus based David, that there was a different, like David, like you said, David HaMelech was modest and humble, and so were most his descendants. And therefore, in the Beis HaMikdash, they all sat, not just David, but his descendants sat in the Beis HaMikdash, as opposed to the kings of Israel, who were more, according to Chazal, more arrogant and and didn't have that same humility. And so, what happened when they came to the Beis Hamikdash, when they were Ola Regel, you found that the descendant of David was sitting, and the Melech of Yisrael was standing. Therefore, in the time of Yeravam, Melech Yisrael, he forbade the people in Malchus Yisrael from going to the Beis Hamikdash because he was embarrassed by the fact that Rechavam was sitting, whereas he was required to stand in the Beis Hamikdash. So apparently they stopped coming to Aliyah Regel.
Right. Remember, Yeravam put up guards to prevent people from coming.
Why?
That's why he's considered a chotei umachti. So Bernie is pointing out that it was for arrogance that Yeravam did it. It's a good shot. That it was embarrassing to him. He was not Malchus Beis David, so he was not allowed to sit in the Azara. And Rechavam, the son of Shlomo, that's when it split. The kingdom of Israel and Yehuda split in the time of Rechavam, and Yeravam ben Nevat was one who split the kingdom. Mirz Hashem will learn that when we get to Malachim. Says David, "Uma Yosef David oladaber elecha." You know what I need, like the master, like a master who knows what his animal needs. You have informed me of all of his greatness. This is the davening we do. Everything that I've heard, there is nobody like you, Hashem. And another pasuk that we know, Chav Gimel, Mi ka'amcha Yisrael goyechad ba'aretz. Who is like your nation Israel, one nation? Asher alchu Elokim livdos lo la'am, that Hashem went to Mitzrayim to redeem his nation, v'lasum lo shem, v'lasos lechem agdula v'neros la'artzecha, and is doing all this beautiful thing in his nation, in a country. The Gemara in Bracha says, we know what's in our tefillin. We have Shema Yisrael. But what's in HaKadosh Baruch Hu also wears tefillin? What pasuk is in Hashem's tefillin? Mi ka'amcha Yisrael goyechad ba'aretz. This pasuk is in Hashem's tefillin. Who is like your nation Israel? One, it's the nation that makes HaKadosh Baruch Hu one, and there's a lot more to say about that pasuk. The people Israel have made you on your throne, Hashem. He davens that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu said about his family should remain forever. He should do what you said. And your name, David is now speaking to Hashem. Hashem tzvakos Elokim Yisrael. And my house should be firmly established in front of you. Revealed my ear. Bayit evnelach, or you heard that I wanted to build a house. Alkein matzav tachat libo, I found place in your heart. Lispalel elecha et hatfilah azot. Ve'ata Hashem Elokim ata Elokim. You are our God. Udvarcha you emet. Right? This is part of our davening. Udvarcha emet v'kayam la'ad. Right? We say that on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. V'tedaber lavdecha et hatova azot. You spoke great things to me. Ve'ata ho'el uvarech es beis avdecha lios lo mufanecha. Bench your bias. He's asking Hashem to bench his bias. Ki atar Hashem Elokim dibarta. You spoke umibarchaskacha from your blessing. Yuvarach beis avdecha leolam. So a very beautiful parak, which solidifies David HaMelech's reign as the Malchus Beis David forever and ever. Comments, questions, before we move on to next week's parak? I'll say something else next week about the Mika Amcha Yisrael pasuk, because it's something that we say in Mincha and Shabbos every week. And as I said, it's the pasuk that is in Hashem's tefillin, whatever that means, that Hashem wears tefillin. I mean, Hashem is not a physical being. So whatever the concept that his tefillin, that's the pasuk in his tefillin.
Ernie, did everybody read the article in the Jewish Action magazine about David HaMelech being unable to build the Beit HaMikdash? There was an article in Jewish Action by Rabbi Zivotofsky about David HaMelech, and that the misconception that he wasn't able to build the Beit HaMikdash because he had blood on his hands. And he says that's a misconception, that the truth is that the Beit HaMikdash could only be built in a time of complete peace in Eretz Yisrael. And since there wasn't complete peace in the time of David HaMelech, it had to be built by Shlomo, because in Yehuda it says that there was complete safety. And he brings the proof. He said that a Kohen who commits a murder by accident is not banned from doing duchening. Even though he committed murder, he's still allowed to duchen. And he said also that during the wars in Israel, the Israeli soldiers who were Kohanim and had to kill people because of war, are still allowed to duchen, even though they killed people. So he said that's also proof that that's not the reason why David HaMelech did not build the Beis HaMikdash.
Fegi, fantastic. Last week, we learned this all in depth. And we pointed out exactly like you said, that it was not the chisaron of David. In fact, just the opposite. We brought a svara that David was so holy that if he would have built the Beis HaMikdash, it would never have been able to be destroyed. And then when the Jewish people when they were taken into Golus, basically Hashem took his anger out on the sticks and the stones of the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore the Jewish people were allowed to survive. Otherwise, it would have been the destruction of Klal Yisrael. So it was to our benefit that it wasn't built in the time of David. It was to David's chus, that if it would have been built in David, it would have never been able to be destroyed. Which is further addition to supporting what you just said.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everybody have a very good week.
Saturday night or
You
Sunday?
too.
Try next week at 9:30. Let's see how that goes.
Okay.
Or we move back